Okay.
Bill Roseheim, you look rested and relaxed and all renewed.
I'm feeling it. It's great to see you all. Thank you. It's great to be back.
Good to see you.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Daryl.
How's it going?
So far, so good.
Kelly, I want to know, are you really spending your winters down in Texas or Florida somewhere?
South Texas, Rio Grande Valley.
And therefore you're missing out on the 70-degree weather up here in the Midwest?
Yeah, I was playing golf this morning. It was beautiful here. It was lovely. And when it does get cold where you are, Chris, I will remind you of that.
Yes, you will.
Yes, I will.
Good, I'm glad.
A few of my church families would spend their time during the winter there as well, Kelly.
It is, it's pretty lovely in the winter. In the summer, not so much.
Yeah.
Well, it's lovely. It's just really hot.
I just spent a few days up in the Boundary Waters. It was 15 degrees. That was pretty nice. I like that.
Did you do any canoeing?
15 degrees, water. What happens to water in 15 degrees?
Oh, okay. So your canoe didn't have a sled bottom
No.
or
No, and I couldn't find our musher that we used years ago when the kids were little to see if I could rent dog sleds. We've done dog sledding together before up there. No luck. Sorry, that was really sarcastic and mean, Bill.
No, it was spot on. It was another reminder. That's what I get for jumping off sabbatical early to be on this meeting.
That's right. Hey, Paxton, want to come back for a day? Just one more.
Yeah. No, I told him, I said, I'll jump on. He said, oh, bless you. He's on his way back to Topeka.
Oh, Larry, welcome.
Thank you.
I don't know, do we need to do any formal introductions to Larry? This is your first meeting.
It is. Some of you know me from my days as the area minister for North Texas and the Southwest region, where I served for 16 years. And now I'm the interim co-regional minister with Ken. So I do bring the joyful experience of the Southwest regions restructured with me, if that ever becomes information that the group would want.
One never knows.
One never knows. There was good and there was bad.
Is the restructure going well?
Well, as far as I can tell, because I'm an observer now, retired, I was the last area minister standing of the 8. And our area was one of the last to fully dissolve its structure and turn over its funds to the region. It was a much better process than some expected. Now, when you grade the restructure, you probably have to talk to Andy Mangum directly to get his perspective on it, because when I retired, I just got out of the whole information loop, and on occasion I hear rumbles of one thing or another, but I try to stay far away.
Did you say you were in the Southwest or
Yes.
East corner? or neither?
Southwest region, Northeast, North, it's Dallas. Basically, I was
Okay,
area minister for the 75 Dallas churches.
okay, okay.
As many tries as we did, Larry, to make the region more efficient, I'm glad that finally happened.
It did.
And I see your cowboy pillow behind you, and I have an 11-week-old puppy, and so I'm
Oh, yay.
I'm
Yay.
wearing my sweatshirt to protect my arms and body from the teeth.
Understood. I'm still smarting from the defeat of the Cowboys by the Kansas City Chiefs last Sunday.
Well, I've been here long enough to pull for the Chiefs now, so.
Yeah. Well, here I am serving in Kansas, as a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Yeah, we don't. Oh, I grew up in Kansas, so we don't like Dallas.
Those are sort of not good words.
Larry, tell us a little bit about your background. Just introduce yourself to us, if you could.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Michigan and graduated high school in Indiana. I went to Culver Stockton College, where I discovered the Disciples. Went to Dallas Theological Seminary, then was the pastor at First Christian Church Hematite. You get bonus points if you know where Hematite, Missouri is. Then I went back to Dallas, senior minister of Pleasant Grove Christian Church. Then I went to Traverse City, Michigan, and had 10 great years there. And then I became the area minister back in Dallas. I have a wife, 3 kids, 7 grandkids, all of whom live within an hour of our house here in Garland, which is a suburb of Dallas. And cowboy fan, computer gamer, lots of things. We're approaching this co-ministry, this co-regional ministry with Ken. I do a week, basically a month in Kansas, and then the rest of the time I'm doing it by Zoom and telephone from my home here. What else do you want to know?
That's good, but let us do a quick introduction of ourselves to you. My name is Daryl Lauber. I'm the pastor of Bethany Christian Church in Lincoln, Nebraska,
Okay.
and have been here 26 years. And so that's it. So let's go, just go ahead when you're ready to introduce yourself.
Hi, Larry. I'm Kelly Gindelsberger, part of the Kansas contingent. I am a retired minister and former regional moderator in Kansas.
Your name is spoken of with awe, from what I've heard.
Well, which just proves Abe Lincoln was right. You can fool many people a good bit of the time, or something like that.
Yeah.
His wife was also a moderator.
Yeah, she was before me. She was much better.
I'm Peggy Chandler. I'm from
Okay.
the Kansas City contingent. I attend Lee Summit Christian Church and serve on the regional board in Greater Kansas City.
I had a close friend that went to Lee Summit, Ray Hankins. I don't know if the Hankins are
Yes,
still.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
I'm Bill
I am
Rose.
Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm Mike Ness. I'm the pastor of Murray Christian Church, which is just south of Omaha. So I'm a part of the Nebraska contingent. I've been serving this congregation for 7 years, and I serve as one of the commissioned ministers working in the area.
Awesome.
And I'm Bill Rosheim, serving as regional minister in the Greater Kansas City region. And really appreciate seeing Peggy's face again. It's been a little while.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Ruby Brower, Larry, and I'm from Manhattan. And
Yep,
I'm the moderator-elect of Kansas.
we met at the gala.
Yes, we did.
I'm Chris Morton, Regional Minister up in Nebraska.
Awesome.
Hi, Larry.
I can.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, Lori, or 15055.
I have no idea what that is, so sorry. At least it doesn't say, what was the one yesterday, owner?
Yeah.
And I'm Megan. I'm up in Lincoln, Nebraska, loosely associated with South Point Christian Church. And yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to, that's everybody, I think, right? I'm going to open with a few words of wisdom from a book entitled The New Adapters, written by Jacob Armstrong with Adam Hamilton and Mike Slaughter. I picked this book up probably, it was in 2015 when it was written, so probably 2 generalists ago. Wanting to learn more about adaptive learning, which is kind of a theme or topic of our discussion tonight. The author says, in a changing culture, new adapters have to learn the best ways to encounter new people and form real relationships that lead to deep connections. We must take the time to form the kinds of relationships that allow us to invite people to encounter God. A great way of doing this is identifying and meeting people of peace. I thought that was our second Advent candle is on the theme of peace. This technique employed in African church planting today is adapted from the teaching of Jesus about going out into the community and listening. When Jesus sent out the 72 into the neighborhoods to knock on doors and hand out brochures about the church or something like that, he recommended looking for people of peace. A quote from Luke chapter 10, whenever you enter a house, first say, may peace be on this house. If anyone there shares God's peace, then your peace will rest on that person. If not, your blessing will return to you. Remain in this house, eating and drinking whatever they set before you. Instead of standing on the corner with a megaphone preaching in the hopes of drawing a crowd, look for people who, as Jesus says, shares God's peace. Every community has them. People who are connected with others in a peaceful way. Our church grew rapidly when we connected with one person who immediately connected us with 12 more, the author says. One example was connecting with the leader of a local moms group. This group met once a week for much needed socialization for the mothers and play for the young children. These are the type of interactions that many new moms find in their church home. The moms group was mostly women who didn't have a church home. Connecting with just one young mother in this group led to a dozen, eventually coming to our church. You will learn about your community from the people of peace, the connectors, the leaders in your community. Find them, spend time with them, learn from them. Will you pause in prayer with me? O God of us all, we pause at the beginning of our time together to say we love you and humbly ask your blessing and guidance. As you bless us with the way of Jesus in this Advent season, guide us to lead others to Christ's invitation of transformation and wholeness. Amen.
Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah, tonight I'm going to have Chris do a little agenda overview, and then I will lead us into a discussion on Joyce's report. So I hope you all had a chance to read it. So Chris, share with us the agenda.
I'm hoping that you all may have actually had time over this last week or so. I sent out the materials for tonight's meeting on Monday of last week and again yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
So I understand if you didn't have a chance to, we thought maybe it'd be helpful to just do a quick walkthrough for about 5 or 7 minutes. The first piece is the proposed collaboration framework, and the version I sent you is one that I set to our letterhead, just so that you could see what it might look like depending on how we choose to use it. And maybe we do or don't want to set it on letterhead, but I just thought you should see it rather than conceptualize it. Oh, I should pause and ask, is everybody okay with my recording this for us? Terry Hort Owens is on sabbatical and she may want to watch it, and others as well. I don't know. All right, thank you. So the collaboration framework, what I want to do is just say to you, if you take a look at that document, would it help if I brought that up on the screen for you all? Yes, I'm seeing a couple.
I think so.
Okay, let me do that. So the first 4 things that we say in our collaboration framework are kind of conceptual philosophical statements, right? Theological statements. And the very first thing that really is pointing us in a particular direction is around adaptive learning and cultures, number 5. And we don't try to say that we're going to tell people what that is or how they ought to do it, as much as we're going to want to learn together. I really appreciated Daryl's reading this evening around that. Even the communications has an adaptive learning mode or sensitivity to it. So wanted to start with that one. And then the second is Joyce's report, which was interesting. She never actually talks about adaptive leadership, change, or cultures in her report. And in fact, most of her report seems pretty technical and mechanical. But there are some things that, like the assumptions that she lists out, those first 4 assumptions, they are adaptive in tone, right? They set a tone of being adaptive. Some of the questions asked by Joyce, and one that I pull out, what is the current transformation of the church? We've always talked about church transformation. Maybe we're ready to shift some of that language around and think differently, not just replace words, but really maybe even change our stance towards what we mean about the church adapting, not the church changing, but adapting. And what does that mean? What's that look like? And then she takes some time walking us through our steering committee meetings and the shift in our own approach as a steering committee from a kind of a program-driven, outcome-driven approach to, wait a minute, we got a lot to learn here. And so she talked, early meetings revealed energy from the committee members to learn with each other and a curiosity about what was possible in partnership, right? So that we came up with a statement that we want to discover ways to strengthen the connection and vitality of the church in its local region. Like discover in itself is one of those adaptive terms. And there was discussion about what was valued and what was found to be challenging. And so she lists all of that, which is part of that adaptive learning culture. A willingness, a posture, a stance, if you will, that says, here's what we value in Nebraska, and here's what we're feeling are some of our own challenges in Nebraska. Can we be transparent with each other across regional lines so that we can get clear about what it looks like to us, what church looks like to us? And then the shared practices are actually very adaptive in nature, although she doesn't call it that, which I think is really interesting. We're going to talk more about this later, but the next steps that she gets to is often about adapting. that we're not going to just change structures for structure's sake. The third thing was the proposed collaboration. No, wait a minute. Joyce's report, collaboration for, Kansas Leadership Center. Ken's going to walk through this in more detail later, I believe. But I wanted to just name it. One of the things that pointed this planning group of Lori, Daryl, and I, as we were thinking about tonight's agenda, and like, can we focus on something instead of being all over the place? Can we narrow the agenda down? And we decided the narrow window was the question of adaptive leadership, change, culture. And the fact that these other documents are talking about and lifting up adaptive culture. And then Kansas has landed this wonderful grant with 50 slots to take on training in adaptive leadership. And some of those slots can be shared by people from Kansas City and Nebraska. And then Daryl pointed out that Brian Mclaren, how many of you are familiar with Brian Mclaren's work? A few. Brian Mclaren is a progressive evangelical, I guess is the best way I would describe him. I think he would describe himself in the same way, but very much from the evangelical stream. Tony Campolo, if you're familiar with his name. Brian is one of the leading voices in creating the Wild Goose Festival in Asheville, North Carolina each year. And Brian is a prolific author, professor, pastor of a church, retired now. And he wrote a book right around his retirement called The Great Spiritual Migration, taking off on the Great Migration from coming out of the Reconstruction and the Jim Crow laws and the African-American community moving to the north, migrating from the south to the north. And he looked at the religious community and religious faith. And much of what Brian really writes about is helping the church, as Daryl pointed out, it's really a curriculum on love. The church's love, like really adapting the very nature of what it means to be church and learning about that. So wanted to weave that in as well, because that's another resource that we might consider as we do our work. And then finally, this is the old chart that you've all seen. Hang on a minute. Where do I put? Oh, I know where to put it. Here we go. All right, so this is the chart that we were looking at months ago, and the difference between spirituality and religious. And if you look at just that chart by itself, what happened? Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh crap. I'm gonna have to wing it rather than take up all of our time. Apparently I signed out of Adobe and it's making me sign back in, and I can't remember my password without looking it up. But if you look at the list, if you happen to have it near you or can pull it up, the religious folks, pretty certain. There's a lot of certitude in that list. Spirituality folks, a lot of uncertainty, inquisitiveness, curiosity, wonder, openness, right? An adaptive stance. And so when you look down at the list of the adaptive versus technical, you can see what the differences are. The technical is very mechanical, there's a solution to this problem and we can fix this. The adaptive is, no, there's a big issue here and it's a technical solution will not change what's going on. I think, I'll speak for myself. I don't know where you all are on this. I'm grateful that we're taking a focus on adaptive leadership and adaptive cultures, because I believe the church has missed this boat. Society has been changing drastically for 30 plus years. We still have churches voting on whether they're open and affirming, and the Supreme Court has already told us it's legal, folks. You don't have a choice anymore. It's already the law of the land. That's an example. It's a controversial one, and I apologize if that offended anybody, but that's the kind of thing that I think the church has not done well to adapt to our society. And there are people who would say we ought not to adapt to our society. right? There is pushback. And I think we're seeing that in civil rights with the Black Lives Matter movement. Civil rights movement of the 60s, not well embraced by the church.
Right.
Kicking and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Struggle. We struggle to adapt. And there's reasons for that. I think we need to, I hope we'll use this as a window and an opportunity for us collectively to consider how is society changing and how is the church adapting, not only to the outside forces, but also from within. Lots of changes within the church. And it feels to me, it seems to me that learning how to adapt better might serve us really, really well instead of having that certitude and that definitiveness. But again, now I've shifted to preaching, so I will stop. That was the overview plus. I apologize for the plus.
No need to apologize, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. I think one of the things that we might do is try to identify the adaptive ministries or the adaptive ways that our churches in each of our regions are what they're doing. So it might help us become a little more familiar with adaptive cultures, adaptive learning. Much is being written about that, has been written about that in the last decade. So, and more to hear. I came across a situation just before this meeting in my church that had me a little upset because it was an issue of non-welcoming or non-hospitality to a group of addicts. And so it just, again, was, it's no big deal, but it showed me that, we have to move from the church of the 50s and live into the present, which is not an easy thing to do. But identifying those adaptive ministries that each of our regions has would be a good thing for us to do. Did all of you have a chance to read Joyce's narrative report? Do you have any feedback, anything that you would like to point out that you found especially helpful or had questions about?
I thought Joyce was, how shall I phrase this nicely? I thought Joyce was very generous with us in the way she wrote about all the good things we did. I don't remember feeling quite that good about them as we were doing them. So I think she is very adept at identifying the things that we did, but also making us feel good about them. Either I missed it that we did all that stuff, or she put a pretty good shine on it, which a good consultant will do, of course.
Yeah, well, we paid her.
Yes. Well, we wanted to get our money's worth. And I think we did get our money's worth. I thought her coaching was spot on, and her forcing us to ask better questions was spot on. I just had to laugh a little bit that her report was as glowing as it was.
I like the initial questions that or initial questions asked by the coach. I circled 5 of them. One of them was number 9 that Chris pointed out. What is the current transformation of the church suggesting to us about further transformation waiting to happen or emerge among the regions? But I do think our movement forward as a steering committee can be to address those questions. Are there any of those questions that popped out to you in terms of what would help us in our work together?
Well, I think certainly the questions about resources, how could we better use resources across the three regions so we don't continually act in redundant ways? I thought those are all good. I don't think we know what those are yet, but it's a good question to be asking.
I'm struck by oh, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, I am struck by question 15. What would we have to leave behind and take, or what do we need to take forward to make, in order to make progress together? I don't think we always do a good job of identifying what's the things that we need to leave behind, because we can be perhaps too attached to the things that we have grown comfortable with. And so I think doing some work about identifying those things and then realizing that with the identification and moving forward with leaving things behind in particular, there's going to be grief work that we have to do, because it may be that something that had been very important to nurturing our lives up to this point is something that we're going to have to leave behind. And that may be hard to do. So I really like that question.
Since I'm new to the process, I was interested in the question about if we are in partnership, the covenant relationship aspect. Apparently you all did a chapter of the covenant Bible study. Is there consensus? Does this group have consensus about what it means to be in covenant? And my thought is, is covenant something that comes and stays, or is it something we have to recommit to every day?
That's good. Good question.
Well, it strikes me that living in a covenantal relationship is adaptive in by its very nature, which would suggest that we have to re-up that commitment on a frequent basis. I don't know if it's every day or not, but we have to remind ourselves frequently what we're about in a covenantal relationship. And I think the other thing we learned from that, and we can use moving forward, is that covenant is a great framework for doing work together rather than having to redefine our regions or restructure or, concern ourselves with bylaws or, all that sort of stuff. But being in covenant kind of covers the bases, supersedes it all.
I don't want to risk oversimplifying, but I do think that moving forward, that it is, and each time we work on something, if we pause and ask, is this something we can work together, or is this something that's more just our region? But it's a affirmation each time we go to work on something, to decide whether this is something that we can benefit by working together on.
At some point, the covenant has to be enlarged or introduced to the local congregations that are a part of the region, because in our discussions now for a year or more than a year, I think we're pretty clear about, well, we're getting clearer about that, but we haven't brought in, our partners, which are our congregations, into the discussion. So covenant hasn't really been tested yet, I don't think, as much as it could be or will be. But it does lead into on the agenda for tonight, creating a partnership agreement. And I think that where are you all at? Are we covenanting together to go forward? We've ended another year. Do we go forward still? And I think one of the questions that our planning committee had, again, was in fairness to everyone, is everyone agreeable to continue on the committee? And we'll take a look at that later. But that's up to maybe the regional ministers to ask the members of this committee. So we will be moving forward in this year, without Joyce's kind of help to keep us on track. But
Harold,
yeah,
I add just one comment.
yeah.
Ken, I want to build on what you said. I really appreciate the comment about what is it we have to leave behind and what will we need to take in the grief work that's going to come with it. And this is, I'll try to say this without oversharing. But I think when I look at defects of character, my defects of character, the very ones that are the ones that God's saying it's time, and I'm saying no, not yet. The ones that are hardest for me to give up are the ones that bring me the most comfort. And if I can keep myself grounded in my own personal journey, there's a great deal of empathy for the church and how hard it is to give up so many things that have brought us comfort. Because we don't even, any of the people in the church that I know don't even think this way. I don't know how we get from here to there, but I think that's part of the questions I hope that we'll ask, because that's really what we're going to be asking churches. If we're asking churches to really face off on what's bringing you the most comfort that might need to be shed.
Well, I think people will leave behind important things to them if that to which they're traveling toward is enticing enough. Okay, so if the risk worth the journey is what I think has to be framed. This collaborative, committed effort to do region in a different way can we articulate to a church board, for instance, what the positive result is hoped for? Because that was the thing that was the hardest in Southwest region when we went through restructure there, was trying to convince governing boards of churches that what we were moving toward was going to be better for them than what they would be leaving behind. And if you look at historical efforts.
It's a great question, Larry. And I don't think we know the answer, because that's the nature of this adaptive learning that we're about here. Kind of means that we really don't know. Right. We don't know what the end looks like. If we knew that answer, we would already have a process outlined to get there. So we're trusting that the journey we're on will be worth it, because surely the Holy Spirit wouldn't be leading us down a pathway of damnation or something like that. So it's the trouble with this adaptive learning business, is that we're asking people to enter a risky environment without having a clear target of what's at the end of it. But it's come learn with us, come and be on this adventure with us. as we try to figure this out. And I'm leery that there are more than a few people out there that might not be willing to take that risk. Although I am also aware that there are people out there doing it right now. You know, Daryl, you asked the question about, you know, congregations that are, I think the question was congregations that are leading adaptively or learning adaptively or trying experimental things out there. And I know of at least a couple in Kansas, and I'm out of the loop pretty much, so there's likely more, but there's good stuff to point to.
And I
But
would simply add, I think, thank you, Kelly and Larry, both, because I think that's this discussion in this group can become, in many ways, that incubator of not only learning, but also how to have the conversation in and of itself in a way that is adaptive rather than instructive. I think that's the easy trap, is that we'll become instructive about how to be adaptive in a way that is saying there is only one way and it's our way, don't you know, which is old trap, old style. And in fact, it's really, it's an invitation into a whole different, the word I used earlier was a different stance, a different posture. The certitude that we often find and are asked for, church members want. Can you give us some certainty? Can you point us in the right direction? Tell us what we're doing. Give us more clarity. No, we really can't. In adaptive cultures, that's not the nature. And that's going to be a hard one. That I believe it is with me, and it's the adaptive work that I've done elsewhere. The thought that occurred to me was, you know, if you look back in history, there's something about Moses and the Pharaoh and wandering in the wilderness that comes to mind. I just rather go back be a slave under Pharaoh than put up with this uncertainty, right?
Mhm.
We're in really good relationships with lots of people who have invited us into the uncertainty.
In the Kansas region, the search committee that I'm ex officio on, so I sit in and listen, has been having listening conferences. And what I'm seeing or experiencing is the disequilibrium that most of the congregations are in right now. And I think that unsettledness allows people to think outside the box, to be a little more adaptive, to be more open to change than they would normally be when everything is working just like clockwork and set in stone. So I think that this is probably a good time in the history, at least of Kansas, to be thinking about introducing some adaptive what ifs. I also think there are plenty of people who are just stuck, their feet are stuck in the mud. So, you know, what do I know? So.
I do, you know, I do think that the language is going to be new for our congregations, and it's not that hard of a concept, but it's language that perhaps we haven't been using in our churches, and so it's going to take a little time for them to catch on. I have to admit, I have purchased books like this one, The New Adapters, that I read to you from the devotion. It's been on my shelf for 4 years. I haven't read it, but given our planning meeting just a few weeks ago with Chris and Laurie, I I need to read up on that. So I've been doing some work in that. It's an example of, I don't, you know, it's new language for our congregations. I appreciated the document of the Kansas Leadership Commission, and I think that's going to be interesting. I want to hear more about that. But anyway, there's something new about this. So I do think it's going to be something that we have to introduce as well as practice and define, as I still think we ought to define and lift up, maybe as regions, those ministries that are happening that are that fit this model of adapting. Again, the book, A Spiritual Migration, How the World's Largest Religion is Seeking a Better Way to be Christian by Brian Mclaren, is great. We're studying that in our congregation, and it's challenging to a lot of people who read the church from old paradigms, and it's challenging. We should be moving on. So
can I?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, given what you just said, and I don't know if we have to make a decision about this tonight or even now, but I want to raise the question. Is there a single book that we all might want to read as a steering committee and maybe spend 15 minutes during each meeting, just asking what questions did that chapter or that section of the book that we agreed to read, what questions did it raise for you? Not to try to answer them, not to try to instruct and be, you know, who's the smartest guy in the room, but a person in the room, excuse me. But, you know, just to raise the questions so we can hear, where are we feeling challenged? Where are those questions surfacing for us? Just an idea.
How do the rest of you feel about that? Well, certainly those two books, the one by Brian Mclaren, and he would like to see churches become what he calls schools of love. And he really hits hard on that. And it's a great, I think it's a really good thing. Mclaren has made the shift, as Chris had mentioned, have made the shift from evangelical Christianity to a more progressive understanding of his faith. And now is one of the most, he was a predominant writer in evangelical Christianity and now has shifted in. So I think that's good because people can make that identification with him. I did, because I shifted from growing up in a pretty conservative environment in Yates Center, Kansas, to where I went to seminary and then into inner city of St. Louis. But anyway, that's a good one. Also, I would highly recommend the book, The New Adapters by Jacob Armstrong. Are there other books that you have that you would like to lift up?
I'm not remembering the title of it. Ken, maybe you, it's Ron Heifetz's book on adaptive change, but.
Are you talking about Leadership on the Line? That's the one book I have that kind of introduces, I think, concepts of adaptive change, but.
Ron Heifetz, for those of you who aren't familiar, is the professor at Harvard who really has gathered this kind of thinking. It's not new thinking. He's not claiming that he's some genius who created this whole cloth. He's really pulling threads together and creating this thing that he has titled adaptive change, adaptive leadership. So he might, that might be an interesting book, but I'm like you, Daryl. I read another book, and I've gotten Heifetz's book, and I've not finished it. So I don't know if it's maybe more academic, whereas Mclaren's book, The Great Migration, Spiritual Migration, is a much easier read, quicker read. My concern with Ryan's book on the Great Spiritual Migration is that it's awfully instructive. This is what I want churches to do. So there's a little bit of uncertainty for me about that.
And I was going to comment, Chris, that I think one of the paradigms we've been in for many years is that if we have a problem in a church, or we feel that malaise, or we feel like we have a problem, then all we need to do is read a book by one of the wizards, and that will tell us everything we need to know about what we need to do. And I think most of us have found over the years that that doesn't work very well. You know, what works in one environment doesn't necessarily work in another, and sometimes we have to do the hard work of learning ourselves. The book I put in the chat there, that's another Heifetz book, Leadership Without Easy Answers. I would say it bends more toward the academic, but all of the work, most of the work that the Kansas Leadership Center does stems from that sort of work. So, I mean, it's good stuff, but it's not a walk in the park to get through either.
Okay, to move us on, I think instead of trying to decide on a book, let's think about the books that we have or that we know of, and maybe do a bibliography of those, or something would be something I'm interested in. Bill, your book, The First Nations Version of the New Testament by Terry Waldman. I think that's, I'm doing a lot of reading of First Nation stuff. And I've also got a new book, can't remember the title of it, by a First Nations writer. So, and okay, so anyway, yeah, we can probably go on and on and on about it. So let me move us along on that. And maybe we can decide next time if we want a particular book to do, but maybe if we start to compile a listing of these things and adapt to change in leadership, it would be good to do. So on your agenda, we've talked about her report, not in length, but we have in the back section, she talks about assets and how we might collaborate as regions in sharing those assets. I don't know if you had a time to look at those. Also, she included questions for local congregations that would be good as we begin to formulate a strategy of how to reach the local congregations. Thank you, Chris.
Trying to find the questions.
Appendix A. There you go. What did you, thank you. I knew that. What do these, are these, are you happy with these questions in terms of when we take them to the local church? Do you have anything to add or any comment on the list that she's given us?
I have to admit that I'm struggling with the word love about your local church or love about your region. Those are not usually two words I hear in the same sentence.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, Bill. Having been in listening conferences lately, I would probably omit question 1 and go straight to, when you hear the words vitality of the church, what does it suggest? And I'm not really sure that these are the kinds of questions that are going to introduce a collaboration between the 3 regions. Well, it may, I don't know. So I'll be quiet now.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
I wonder though, Lori, if there's a question in between number 4 and number 5. So what do you need from your regional church in specific ways your regional church can help your congregation? How could you imagine the 3 regions of Kansas, Kansas City, and Nebraska working together, improving or enhancing?
I really like that, Chris. I like that. Yeah, working together to enhance congregational vitality. I'm not sure for 3 is, from a scriptural perspective, I'd like to think that my congregation is scripturally aware or alert. I don't know that they would feel comfortable in trying to answer that from a scriptural perspective.
I agree with you, Daryl.
I'm not putting them down. They're very smart,
No.
but I think that would catch them. I mean, from a scriptural perspective, I mean, they could easily answer, how are we a vital congregation? But I don't think they could answer it very well from a scriptural perspective.
So is there another way that we could though ask them, what do you use? How do you, what is the way that you measure? What's the theological, scriptural, or other way that you measure vitality, congregational vitality?
Oh yeah, profit margin and growth.
I wonder, is there a way to engage, to help congregations to address the question, what do people outside of this congregation speak well about? What do they say when they speak well of the congregation? What do they say? So that the congregation is not just relying on its own internal feedback, but it's also getting a sense and hopefully some affirmation. Or is in the case of some churches that I visited, when I talk to people in that community, they go, I didn't know we had a disciple church in this community.
I think that's great, Bill.
I do too.
It's one of the
Because
things.
it takes it out of, talking about myself to what do other people say about
Right.
me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if on 3B, instead of saying, how do you measure, which asks for a definitive diagnostic, how might you measure? Seems to me would invite more exploratory responses.
Thanks, Larry.
Give people a
Yeah.
chance to say something that and take a risk to say something.
And I find myself reflecting that in answering 3, as we have now phrased it, that it's evolving, that they are going to answer question number 1 indirectly.
Mhm.
I think that's right, Michael. And I think all of this is going to have to be prefaced by some kind of a narrative that explains that we have been meeting for over a year, whether they knew it or not. And we're seeing possibilities of growth or excitement or new energy from our work together. I just kind of feel like right now most of our local congregations are completely in the dark to anything we're doing. And that's even with me or Kelly or Ken and Larry going out to all the different minister groups and all those kinds of things, or the board, and specifically addressing that we are dealing with this. What I'm finding out is it doesn't seem to trickle down very well into local congregations.
I appreciate you saying that, Lori, and I wonder if part of that narrative could include some statements from us about why we have found this conversation to be so rich, and why we hope that the conversation will not only continue and evolve, but it'll expand, so that there are more people of peace, to reference and to refer to an earlier reference, that people of peace will hear that and go, "Ooh, I want to know more about that," or "I'd like to be a part of that," or "Yeah, I'd like to answer those questions."
Well, I like that, people of peace. Yeah.
Bill, I think you need to go on more sabbaticals. You've come back just full of all kinds of wonderful things.
I want to piggyback on Lori's statement. I don't like to blame everything on the pandemic, but I really do think that our work has been somewhat closeted by the pandemic, that the major thing on people's minds are their local church and their survival, the way that we're able to be church together. So I know that to be true for mine. We've become more drawn inward than what we usually are because of that.
Okay with my including the framework in this list? I typed it, but didn't speak it out loud, and don't know if you have a reaction, but it seems to me that might be part of it, but maybe it's too much.
No, I think that would be good.
Excellent.
There was a conversation yesterday with some folks in the region about how when you are so focused on survival in your local congregation, that it's hard to think bigger. You're so focused on your immediate needs that you can't dream outside of yourself. And so I think that that's a reality that we just have to overcome in these discussions.
Yeah.
We're going to have to cast a vision that inspires.
I like that. It's possible we might get more headwind, given that we're in a regional assembly year, and we'll be talking about this in the next year about how to communicate our work to the region. I don't know if I don't know how regions are going to be set up for their meetings, but if we do meet in person, I do think that we have an opportunity to really get some new momentum from that. In her appendix B, she listed some, you know, I don't know that there's any comment to make about this, but I thought these are good. It's just a good listing in column by column of the resources that we have across, across the three regions. One of these columns might be the adaptive ministries that we have within our regions that we could somehow try and list to try and help people, ourselves and other people, understand what adaptive thinking is and how we might adapt to collaborate in sharing those assets. Is there anything else that needs to be said about this?
I would definitely like to revisit what Kansas City has on there. I see some things that are not quite right, and some blank spaces. I mean, that'd be easy enough information for us to complete.
Okay. All right, very good. Take a look at those lists, and if anybody has anything to add or revise, then that would be good to just know that. I want to get into, I know there's 3, 4, 5, and 6 here about listing differences, engaging local churches, a survey, focus groups, communication plan, cross-regional church programming ministries. I can almost see like one night committed to each one of those. But is there a, if we're picking out one of those to kind of like really focus on, which one would you, which one would you like to tackle, I guess?
Daryl, are you talking about those listed at the top of page 2 of the agenda?
Yes. Yeah. Numerical number 4, Roman numeral 4, and then the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is underneath that. Yes.
Daryl, you may be looking at our draft agenda, not the one that was sent out. Because there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here's what we sent out.
All right, I probably have that one too, but not right in front of me, so.
What we talked about was just looking at the collaboration framework and asking, are we ready to approve it so that, and then if so, what are we going to do with it? But I don't know if with the limited amount of time, is that where we want to spend our time, or do we want to look at the Kansas Leadership Center material?
Well, I think we want to look at that also. Did you all have a chance though to read the, I appreciate the collaboration framework the committee put together. That's awesome. And, you know, I liked the, I went through it. I mean, do any of you have anything to, I circled a few things on mine, but I think that's great. And do we have permission? I think, do we have permission to give our regions, well, can we give our regions permission to share this with their regional boards and that such?
And after a year, it's a chance to kind of report back to our 3 funding sources. Here's what your $5,000 each. This is the work that we've been doing, if you will.
Okay, yes. Is everybody, let's just get everybody okay with that? Like thumbs up? All right, very good. So I do think we need to give our regional ministers permission to take this back. And
May we take draft off of it?
You're
Or
asking,
is it still a draft until the regional boards look at it?
we can do whatever, we can take draft off of it. Absolutely. But I think we would want, if there's feedback from our regional church boards, we probably want to bring them back to this group to say, hey, some more things for us to think about.
do you want to say like proposed draft framework? Would that be a better word, or same thing, I guess?
I'm okay with proposed.
I think proposed is better than draft.
Okay,
Yeah, proposed presupposes that somebody's going to give us an answer. We're proposing and you need to tell us something. Where draft is just,
No, a draft means we're still working on it. It's not ready for a decision. Whereas
Yeah.
proposed says there's been collaboration and agreement amongst us that this can go forward.
okay, so everybody okay with that? Just changing the word draft to proposed and taking it to our regional boards and regional ministers, are you comfortable with taking this to the regional boards, or do we need to have a member of the steering committee to introduce this to the regional board? I don't know, is that?
I would be planning to ask the three of you from Nebraska to participate in that board meeting in February, which is the next board meeting. That would be the way I would approach it. But
Okay,
I'd be interested to hear what Ken and Larry and Bill think.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. I think having the presentation made by the people who have put the most work into it would be a good thing to do. And of course, we'll be there to help fill in some gaps if there's a need.
I think that's good. And I like that personally. I think that's good for that our boards even get to know us who've been doing this and serving, which they may not know. So I'm happy to do that. And so be especially Joyce's narrative and be familiar with that and keep this partnership initiative in your head and be familiar with that, because that will help us then propose it, and that'll also help give us some momentum to carry forward and go through the next steps. We might ask our regional boards what they would maybe see us be doing, and how they might see us taking this to the congregations as well.
So Daryl, I see that Bill was talking about their regional assembly in October of 2022. And I'm guessing there is a board meeting between then and now. I think it would be interesting to take this to our boards and have that discussion and bring it back and make any changes that need to be made. And possibly, I'm just throwing this out there, but maybe some of us need to be planning on attending the other regions' assemblies as kind of backup to the fact that we are working on this together. I'm just throwing that out there.
Where is Kansas meeting for the regional assembly?
We meet at our camp just outside of Wichita every time. So, And we meet in August.
We have a regional board meeting in April, right?
Yes.
But we can also call a board meeting whenever we need to. So
Right?
So that might be the thing to do, is for us to share when our regional assemblies are, maybe for the next planning group, to craft that as further conversation at the next steering committee meeting. And then we can strategize about being at one another's regional assemblies and what would our presence add, if anything, other than presence.
Well, I have a question. Why not have a representative at the board? Where you have a smaller group, you have discussion. I think this is all about relationships. So much of adaptive culture is about relationship, and to begin to form relationships by having representatives of the other two regions at our board meeting might be even better than waiting until the assemblies. Thought.
Yeah, that could be true. There's always so much, there's so much business and on at the assemblies. Maybe the board meetings are a better place for that.
Well, it's a long time until assembly, 9 months. I mean, that to me seems like we're sitting here not doing anything. And that appears to me to be a waste of time. I don't know. Maybe tell me if I'm crazy. We've been working monthly and now we're going to sit on it for 8 or 9 months.
No, I don't think that's crazy to raise that question, Ruby. I think that's right on target. And my sense was between now and the assemblies, we would be exploring together how we want to engage local churches too. But we probably, out of respect, need to start with our regional church boards to say, this is what we plan to do. But rather than stepping over them and having them feel the pain of that, like
we have to lay the footwork with the board members.
Right. But then we would start working with, and so there's a lot of planning yet to do to get ready for us to, I think, seems to me there's a lot of work yet in engaging local churches. So we got time between that. I don't know when Kansas or Kansas City next meets, but like I said, Nebraska Regional Church Board meets in February. We could ask for an earlier meeting. I'm actually asking the board to probably vote on some stuff around COVID with the increased cases, but they'll probably do that electronically rather than in person. So.
Next.
Okay.
The next scheduled board meeting for Kansas is at the end of April. But we can call one if we need to for specific reasons before then.
We have quarterly board meetings on the fourth Monday of the month in December and March. And so one of the things that we might explore would be to have a conversation in December to set up the board meeting in March and we could do that by Zoom and invite people from the other two regions to be a part of that. And I think there'd be real openness to that. Don't you, Peggy?
I do.
I just think that we populate the discussion by putting people in it. So it's not just this esoteric thing out there. It has people involved. And whether or not they see us as sane people, they'll at least see us as adaptive people.
I think that probably there is some thought amongst our regional boards who approved for us to spend this money a year ago, that they're wondering where we're at. I believe that I did give somewhat of an update. Let's see, I think it was this summer at the summer board meeting, but I think it'd be good to go ahead and share the work we have thus far.
And they're having the 2 articles that Kelly and Mike wrote.
Mhm.
I say let's do it. So how we organize that, or but I'm happy to are you all meeting with your boards in person, or do you Zoom?
That's 'cause
Zoom.
We do a hybrid,
Mostly in person.
mostly in person, but we end up having a few that, I guess the last meeting, we didn't have anyone on Zoom, but
Okay.
anyway.
I suspect that we'll continue to meet on Zoom. I can't say for sure. I have to check with the other board members, but my sense is that's where the executive committee is anyway.
Okay.
Hey, Daryl,
Yeah.
I see that our time is running short, and I wanted to know if you wanted to go ahead and get Ken to talk about the leadership.
I do. Thank you, Lori. That's been on my mind too. So let's go ahead and move into that. But yes, to being present at each other's board meetings, rather than assemblies, but I think that will move us forward. So we'll plan to do that. So Ken, yes, share with us about the Leadership Commission.
Okay. In many ways, what I wrote ahead of time is probably the best and most succinct way for me to have described the Kansas Leadership Center. This is something that we became acquainted with back about 2018, kind of by accident. But the basic idea for the Kansas Leadership Center is that, as I said in here, is an organization that came into being from the Kansas Health Foundation, which was started with money within the United Methodist Church when they sold one of the big hospitals in Wichita. But they had this passion for how can we best improve the health of individuals in Kansas. And out of those conversations, they began to say, one of the things that affects the health and well-being of individuals is the health and well-being of the organizations that they are a part of. And if we can improve that, then that will bleed over. It's a really systems theory understanding of health and wellness. And it's that led them to do some exploring and realizing that the best way to help improve the health of organizations is to help more people exercise better leadership within those organizations. So they began putting together a team that had a passion for leadership development. That team went and did all sorts of studies of the latest thinking about leadership, and they came up with this concept in which they really took Ron Heifetz's work on adaptive versus technical change, and what are the skills that people need to have to learn how to engage in leadership behaviors that really promote adaptive change. And so part of the philosophy you see there is leadership is an activity and not a position. I find that really exciting simply because it gets past that roadblock that a lot of people have of saying, well, I can't do anything about that situation because I'm not the leader or I'm not in charge. This really plays into disciple polity really well, because we tend to not invest a lot of power and authority in the clergy. And this can begin to help anybody at any point in the church to realize that they can, by how they relate to people in the life of the church and the groups that they're in, they can actually help the church make progress on the adaptive challenges that they have. And so that second foundational principle, anyone can lead anytime, anywhere on any issue, because it's not about solving the problem. It's about making progress and learning along the way how to better address that adaptive challenge that is that's before you in this case, in our congregations. And so then you have the third principle. It starts with you and must engage in others. Your purpose must be clear. That speaks to what was said earlier about having a clear and compelling vision for what we're about. And of course, it shows that there is leadership is risky. You're going to fail as much as succeed. So part of that is they then were given a boatload of money to provide grants to organizations to help them send people to the training sessions that they developed. And so these grants, like we got, this will be the third time we've gotten this grant. This time we received enough money or a grant that's big enough to be able to send 50 people to 50 training slots total. Originally, what I was told a few years ago was that the grant money could only be used for residents of Kansas because of the nature of the foundational rules. But just recently, we did discover, as Joyce encouraged us to explore, that as long as we use the majority of our grant slots for our Kansas churches, we could spread that out a little bit further. And I think particularly because we're in this type of conversation of how can we work together. And so in my mind, I had a number that we might offer to Nebraska and Greater Kansas City region, and the person that is our point person for putting this together and promoting it and recruiting folks had the same number, which means we are willing to give 10 training slots to each of Nebraska and Greater Kansas City and retain 30 for ourselves. This is really high quality, experiential learning. You don't just go and sit in a lecture. They actually give you learning exercises that you interact with people who are in the same training. And there'll be people from a number of different denominations of church life, but also civic life, and for-profit businesses interacting on trying to understand adaptive challenge or adaptive leadership work. And so that grant takes care of the entire tuition of the training sessions that, if you pay cash retail, is a minimum of $450 a training slot. And depending upon which training you go to, it could be as much as $2,500. And so it's a real bargain. Kansas has also one of our resources that wasn't listed on that chart earlier is we have a fund that's called the Kansas Bible Chair, which was funds from long ago when we actually had a academic Bible chair on the campus of Kansas University. And to not drag out that part of the story, we're now sitting on endowment funds that help to underwrite every single educational event that we have here in Kansas to keep the cost low, or sometimes totally underwrite an event. And so we have added to the Kansas Leadership Center grant so that when we send people, we ask them to pay $25. And their transportation, if you go to the in-person training, and between the Kansas Leadership Grant and the KBC grant, all of their other costs, lodging, meals, books, as well as the tuition is taken care of. So we would be willing to negotiate with you about some of the extra costs beyond the tuition. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, regional leaders, but we may be willing to, in my mind, I would be willing to help use some of those funds to send anyone within this group that we are in conversation with. I think this is one of the keys to the future of church life, is helping our congregational leaders understand these concepts. And I put more of it there in writing. I think I want to stop there and respond to any questions you all might have at this point.
Ken, is this better for like a church team to go to, like one or two congregants, or is it just
right,
like for a pastor, or
right. We were encouraged to make sure that when we could, to send more than just a congregation's pastor, because if a pastor goes and gets this training, it's good and helpful for them, but it doesn't have the same impact in the life of a congregation as it would if you send the pastor and 3 to 4 other church leaders to the same training event, so that they're all hearing the same thing at the same time. They're part of the experience is having conversations about what they're learning in relation to their congregational life. One of the things that participants are asked to do is to identify an adaptive challenge that they are facing in their organization's life before they arrive. And there's some homework about that before you even get to the training sessions. And then part of the work during the training is for you to actually work on that with your group of people, of how can you begin addressing this? How does this concept apply to what we're facing? And there are strategy sessions, I guess you would say. Does that sound right, Lori and Kelly and Ruby? All 3 of the Kansas folks on this meeting have been to at least one training at this point. But so in my mind, as I was thinking about this, Daryl, if each of you from the regional, the 3 representatives from, say, Nebraska, would take a training with 2 people from your congregation, plus like if it's from Nebraska, Chris, you would also go. And if it's Greater Kansas City, it would be Bill and each of the three of your representatives going with two others from their congregation. And so you would each have, that comes to 10, if my math was right. And so that would begin with this group of going and getting that training and impacting your congregations right away, as well as helping with regional church life.
Ken, I'm going to point you to Bill Roseheim's
Okay.
chat, possibility of a group participating in one of these together.
We could just know that might affect how many. Yeah, we could do it that way. I just laid out one possibility of how the 10 slots for each of Nebraska and Kansas City might work.
And I have a question, Bill, don't you have a lot of people in Kansas City that have already done this training?
If they have, it's been through other vendors, not through the Kansas Leadership Center.
Yeah, they a couple of years ago, they actually started holding classes in the greater Kansas City area since Kansas City goes Missouri and Kansas. So through their work or other organizations, you might have some people in congregations up there that have already been through an actual Kansas Leadership Center training. Go ahead, Peggy.
I'm sorry, I just was curious if dates have been set yet.
I believe so. If you went to Kansas Leadership?
I posted the link in the
okay,
in the chat to the Leadership Center. And
yeah,
you can find a calendar through
right.
that.
The other thing that has happened because of COVID, whereas it used to be all of their training was in person, it took them about half the year in 2020 to make an adaptation themselves to offer this training online. I mean, it meant the faculty had to learn new skills and think through how to adapt the curriculum for a virtual training as opposed to in-person training. I have not attended a virtual training at this point. So I don't know what that experience is like. I do know what the experience is like for being in person with these folks from all walks of life, differing worldviews, and it has been some of the most transforming training I've been to since seminary.
It's good stuff. It's, in my life in the corporate world, I was able to attend some pretty good leadership training stuff. And this is as good as any you'll find. I mean, it's top notch.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And I assume we can just check into the website that Kelly posted on the chat room to find dates for this.
Yeah.
Those
if this is what you guys want to participate in, you'll need to go through us to get the promo code in order to, before registering, in order to have the registration fee waived. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
And
I think
is there
yeah.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that one of the reasons why I want to make sure we brought it up is that some of these training sessions fill up really fast. Because I know that I was thinking, oh, I'll do it in June, and I ended up in August. So I'm just throwing that out there that it's
Yeah.
probably something you need to go for. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that there, at this point, we don't have any dates where courses are available that we're.
I think there are dates posted on the Kansas Leadership website.
Yeah, I look, there are.
There's a note in the box saying that there aren't, so I just wanted to double check that.
Yeah, there's,
The other
says no
thing is-
events.
So
Okay.
can you give us some guidance about, like, out of the 50 slots, I would want us to think strategically in Nebraska and like which church, like rather than just this group and that group, you know, to be a little bit more particular. So number of slots that we can think in terms of, if we, like, the pastor and a lay leader from 3 churches, 2 churches.
My initial proposal, Chris, was that the pastor and 2
Right.
lay leaders from 3 congregations,
Okay.
plus you as regional minister.
Okay. Thank you.
Um,
So we're looking at maybe about 10 people.
right.
And Chris, another possibility might be that you want to just focus on your regional board.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the questions I want to sit with to kind of think strategically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be helpful if we had that conversation together as a group. So I'm not trying to.
So when we got our first grant, I first went to regional staff and tried to recruit regional staff to attend, as well as the leadership of our regional board. And then I began trying to identify congregations that spread out across our region. So I used our 5 districts and said, can I get 1 or 2 pastors from each district and their lay leaders to go to the training? And then, of course, after people got that training, we began to use that list as one of the places to turn to when we were looking for new regional leadership, was to bring graduates of the training into that area. I personally believe it has transformed the conversations at our regional board meetings.
Very good to hear. Are those trainings in person that are scheduled as of now? Do you know?
Those that have already checked, there's no events that have been scheduled, or are there? Virtual program dates, you see there in chat.
Yeah.
There has found the in-person dates. And some of that depends on which training. Do they have listed there more than one type of training?
What I put up there was the first training.
Okay.
Your leadership edge training.
Okay.
To find it, you have to go down to the bottom of the website, and then you have to look up the particular programs, and that's where these calendar dates come from. If you click on their calendar, they're not on there. Why they do it that way, I'm not sure, but these are the dates for the first iteration of the training.
Yeah. The Your Leadership Edge training is about a 3-day program, or half days on 2 days and full day in the middle date. So it's actually 48 hours approximately of training. The one that I went to was Lead for Change, which you go for 4 days, skip 6 months with homework, and come back for another 3 days of training. And I've also taken their teaching the leaders. I don't remember the exact title of that. So where they actually help to give you skills to actually teach these concepts within your organization.
Kelly, would
But-
you mind putting in the chat room the distinction between the types of trainings? I'm getting lost on that.
Okay.
It'd be helpful to see that in writing.
Um,
Or is that in your piece? that you wrote?
no, it's not.
Okay, I didn't think so.
What is it you're wanting, Chris? Say that again.
Just it sounds like you're distinguishing types of trainings.
Yeah.
And I'm getting lost about, like, are these dates attached to a certain type of training? And should we be going to
Yes.
production
Right.
training? And I'm getting lost in all of that.
The first set of dates I put up there. Okay. The first set starting February online is February 9th through 10th, in person April 6th through 7th. That set of dates is for the 3-day Your Leadership Edge training. That's kind of the introductory training that they do. It's the least intense training that they do. And then what Ken was talking about just now, Lead for Change, is everything that your leadership edge is, plus a whole lot more, because you do it over a 5-day period. And that's the second set of dates that I put up there, starting with March 29th through April 1st. Yada, yada, yada. So there's 2 sets of dates there, and you can go on their website and, like I said, go down to the very bottom of the page in I always call it the map section, and you can find their various programs. They really have 3 programs in this type of training.
3 main programs, and then they've got advanced programs that are more intensive on various aspects of what they teach. Their website does a good job of explaining a lot of it. Does that help at all, Chris?
I did not see that. It was just my mistake. I was not seeing all of what was in the chat. Good.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, very much. Very interesting so appreciate you sharing that. We should, it's really time to go, I think. So our planning committee discussed just a check-in to the membership of our steering committee. Are we willing to go to keep representing our regions? And, I hope so. But instead of one of us asking you that, I think it probably is better coming from the regional minister in conversation with the members of the committee. So I just would ask our regional ministers to be in touch with your committee members to see if they're on board for another year of meeting together with us. And I hope so, for continuity's sake, that we will agree. For the next meeting and date, the date would be January if it's the last Tuesday, would be January 25th. That would be the 4th Tuesday in January.
We're skipping December.
Yeah. Oh. I hope so.
Okay,
We did last year, so we talked about that. I forgot to ask permission to do that. But I hope that's okay.
Do I need another meeting the week of, no?
No. So if we're on board for January the 25th, is everybody, I may have a conflict. Myself, I have to be in Grand Island with somebody who's attending a day to take them, but I think that I'll be back in time for the meeting. But anyway, January 25th, are we on board for that?
Just a second. That will work for me.
Okay,
Works for me.
right?
January 25th?
Yeah,
Yes.
7 p.m. by Zoom.
yeah, yeah. And so we need a partnership. We need a planning team. I'm under the assumption that it would be Kansas City's turn to lead. Is that right? Because Kansas did last time. So I would be a part of that planning team, and also Bill. And then we would need a leader from the Kansas City, either Justin or Kevin, to take lead in that.
Yes, I'll be connecting with Kevin and Justin tomorrow to learn why they weren't participating tonight.
Okay.
And Peggy, I'll include you in those in that conversation.
If I need to, I can, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Peggy. I know, because you did it last time, I think, didn't you?
I know.
Yeah. All right. Very good. All right. So can we keep, well, Chris is hosting this, but dates, can you all do it the week of the 10th through the 14th? And I guess
you see the 11th?
The 11th, just for planning?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about 1 o'clock?
Check.
What's the date?
January 11th.
January 11th.
It's a Tuesday. And yes, at least right now, that looks like I can make that.
I've got something on my calendar, but we'll wait to see if I even need to be present. I mean,
okay.
I can change what's on my calendar.
And I'm flexible.
Necessary.
I'm just throwing that out. That's the last time, when Lori and Chris and I met, we met at 1 and worked out. So, but I'm free pretty much all day that day. So, yeah, look, very good. So we'll be in touch on the 11th. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Daryl.
It was a lot. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Happy Advent.
Yes.
Yeah, I do want to thank the team for putting together I'm losing the partnership initiative
Framework.
collaboration framework. Yes, thank you.
Well done.
That was very well done. So thank you, Chris, for setting this up and hosting us, taking notes as usual. Appreciate that. So may you all have a blessed night and go in peace.
Thanks. Be
Right.
God.
Thank you, Daryl. Great leadership tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you all again.
Yes,
Same
me
here.
too.
We miss you, Kelly.
Just your smiling faces.
We miss your bourbon. No, scotch.
Ah, sing them all. Let's sing them all.
But the board meetings are not the same. It's sad. It's just sad.
And I'm having to drink some blended scotch down here. I can't find my good stuff. I haven't looked that hard, but so I'm drinking some off-brand.
God, this is being recorded, you know.
Well, if it's any consolation, Kelly, I just used Woodward whiskey to make bourbon balls.